How about we give this panel a round of applause for what they've done tonight? I've got questions. I have questions that I had prepared before their talks, and if you look at my paper, it's changed quite a bit, and this is sort of happening live. As I hear their comments, it sets up new questions, and so I'm going to start with Christopher Thornburg, and this has to do with something that's going to affect real estate, I think. So here's the question: do you expect the dollar to lose value, and how would the devaluation of the dollar impact interest rates? Pretty easy question, right?
Yeah. Well, there's two sides to that question.
Okay.
Right? Let's first talk dollar, and then we'll talk interest rates.
Okay.
The dollar. Remember, one of the things that was generated through this economic downturn through the buildup of this economic downturn was this huge drop in savings and this huge increase in the trade deficit. The trade deficit works in sort of correlation with the dollar. Trade deficit gets wider, you see the dollar go up. Now that trade deficit has to close, and that means the dollar must get weaker. There's very little doubt about that. Now, the second question was, what about interest rates?
Yes.
Now, that is an enormous question because part of that's the dollar, but it's not just the dollar. Okay. There's obviously all sorts of things going on there. Interest rates in general are going to go up. There's no doubt about it.
When?
That's the question, right? I always get that question, when. If I knew that, I wouldn't tell you, Bruce. Look, there's two issues that are going on, right? The Federal Reserve has expanded through this, quantitative expansion, has increased the money supply substantially. The base money supply is up 100%. At some point in time, that's going to start creating inflationary pressures. At that point in time, the Fed has to do one of two things: either sit in the sideline and not start selling off those assets they purchased and allow inflation to kick in. That's going to raise interest rates. Or, alternatively, they're going to fight off inflation by selling off all those long-run securities they bought, and that's going to raise interest rates. So one way or the other, the back end of this thing, you're going to see long-run interest rates start to go up. That means mortgage rates. My argument would be, in the shorter run, it may be politically expedient to allow inflation to kick into the system because that would bail out the asset markets. But for any of you in the room, who was working in real estate in 1982, 1983? What was the mortgage rate then?
18?
17%.
Yep.
And the reason for that, of course, was because of the fear of inflation. Understand that inflation may be politically expedient in the short run, but the long-run consequences on the housing market could be furious.
Okay. Now, I'm just going to ask you a question. And normally, especially on the radio interviews, I'm not challenging in the least. This time, this is for benefit of all. It'd be my opinion that we could absorb a higher interest rate and still have a great real estate market because the combination with the cheap price could absorb a double-digit interest rate just like it did in the 70s. We tripled in price between 74 and 80 when this interest rate nonsense was going on. Mm-hmm. So do you feel that that's okay?
No, listen, there's a very basic relationship. There's this idea out there somehow or other high interest rates are bad, low interest rates are good. Doesn't work that way with the housing market.
Correct. Very
rough rule of thumb, a 1% increase in the mortgage rate means a 10% decline in prices. So...
Yeah, but that's completely not correct.
It's about 1 to 10. One percentage point increase. One percentage point increase is about a 10%, more or less. Yeah, theoretically, you sit down, you're running the numbers. It works, Bruce. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Okay, no. Well, I'm not trying to be... Between 74 and 80, we had a tripling in price in California, and interest rates doubled. Those are that's a history.
First of all, I'm talking the real mortgage rate, not the inflation-adjusted mortgage rate. What you saw back then was in the midst of a high interest rate environment. You got to be very careful about those nominal numbers.
Okay.
I'm talking about a real thing, which is to say the mortgage rate minus the rate of inflation.
Okay.
A 1% increase in the real interest rate leads to about a 10% decrease in the price of homes.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, but that,
I love asking him questions that I don't know the answer to, by the way. I really do.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another one, and this is a bugaboo of mine, so you're getting both barrels tonight. Unemployment is a lagging indicator.
Yeah.
Okay, what does that mean?
That means the labor markets are the last to go into the toilet and the last to dry off.
Okay. Now, interesting way to put that, huh? Okay. Now, does that mean that when you see labor improving, that almost every other category of real estate should have already started to improve?
Yeah. Well, be very careful, because what's interesting is residential and commercial are obviously both types of real estate, and yet residential leads and commercial lags.
Okay.
This is a very standard case. It's a very standard sort of cycle in that way, except for this case, it's like residential really led. I mean, we saw the first cracks in the real estate market in 2006. Early 2006, you started. I mean, you didn't hear that, but it was happening. And now we keep waiting to hear about the collapse in commercial, and we're not seeing it all. So this kind of lead and lag is exaggerated.
Okay.
But it depends on which part you're talking about.
This is kind of why I'm bringing this up, because the last cycle, employment improved in California from 94, 95, 96. We didn't have a price increase until 97. Right. So unemployment did not lag price increases. Now, and this is my concern. If we don't have price increases, you're not going to have a California build anything, and so it leads to the next question. Can you have an improved labor market without a builder having anything to do? Lots of questions, sorry.
Yeah. I'm thinking about real estate from a leading the downturn, but you're right. Real estate, when it hits bottom, tends to sit in the bottom for a very long time.
Okay, again, labor doesn't necessarily...
Labor tends to recover, but don't forget also, I mean, when you say we had job increases in 92, 93, not really.
No, 94, 95,
yeah,
96.
94 they started weekly, 95 things got better, 96 they really started to kick in, and that's when you actually prices start to come up.
Correct, but
so they kind of worked together. They were pretty much in concert. They kind of worked together.
Okay.
And also don't forget that the early part of this downturn in the early 90s, where you're talking about, was a structural problem in California, particularly in Southern California. We lost aerospace, we lost defense. You saw a lot of people leave the state. So the real estate here was hampered also by an excess supply. And again, we're dealing with that as well. I have to say I took a little bit of issue with the idea of somehow or other we need to subsidize the building of new homes. We have too many homes, sir. I mean, that's the problem. We have 2 million too many units out there. And you can't subsidize the construction of homes to help an industry when there's too many homes out there in the first place.
I think also some of the builders have taken on fixing existing inventory as well. And I think that's a smart business model change if they can.
That's what they're going to have to do, right? Because until you burn off these 2 million units, you really can't expect any kind of substantial increase in the pace of construction. This has to be dealt with. This goes back to the idea that the building industry is always sort of boom and bust. But you're dealing. I mean, forgive me for being a little contentious here, but Robert Toll made $700 million between 2000 and 2007, selling too many homes at too high of a price. And now he wants me to open my wallet up and bail him out of his troubles? I have a problem with that.
Okay, we won't let you pay any of it then, that's all. Yeah. Okay. Rick, I've got a question for you. Rick Sharga, has the reason changed why people go into foreclosure in 09 versus 08? Has there been a change in why that occurs for them?
Not as much as the press would have you believe.
Okay.
I realized last month when I was really starting to analyze the numbers, and when my friends at the MBA actually put their quarterly report out, and I had a chance to do some analysis, the media has jumped ahead to the next wave. We're actually looking at a 3-wave foreclosure tsunami. The first wave started roughly in the first quarter of '06, triggered by the subprime meltdown, fostered by ARMS that came afterwards. Now the press would like us to believe that all the foreclosures we're seeing right now are driven by unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
The MBA numbers suggested that about 30 to 33% of the new foreclosure activity is unemployment related. I think that's probably right.
Okay.
What that means is 2/3 of the foreclosure activity is not unemployment related. So what we're really seeing is increasing levels of continued problems from the first wave,
okay,
exacerbated by a new wave. The first wave will eventually run out of steam. We're probably close to that happening. The second wave is going to pick up steam. You were asking Chris about employment being a lagging indicator.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming unemployment peaks around the first quarter of next year, we'll probably see the foreclosures related to that peak around the third or fourth quarter of next year,
okay,
which will be just in time for them to be augmented by the next wave, which, with all due respect to our realtor friends, really is going to happen. And it's the option ARM loans that are coming home to roost. I wish to God they weren't going to happen. I would like to get my life back at some point, but when you're dealing with loans that are going to reset on properties that were overvalued at the time, given to people who wrote up who basically qualified for no documentation loans, they're going to reset. And in most cases, the people will owe more on them when they reset than they did when they took the loan, not accounting for the depreciation in the value of the properties.
Okay.
These things are going to default like I can't even come up. I can't come up with a good toilet analogy like Chris did.
There's a new word that I've read recently. It's called a strategic default.
And strategic default, strategic foreclosures are going to be a problem. You're going to have people with the wherewithal. We've already seen a lot of gaming in the system. We've seen a lot of people, relatively speaking, a lot of people. This is not a widespread phenomenon. But in American culture, we're all raised to respect the sanctity of a contract. Okay, so I got a mortgage. Just because I don't feel like paying my mortgage bill every month doesn't mean I get to stop. That's kind of history. Right now we're seeing this thing where people suddenly realize the house they bought 2 years ago is worth, on paper, half what they owe.
Yes.
And they wonder if it's in their family's best interest to keep paying down a debt on a property that may never hit that value again.
Is there a rationalization process that happens the more foreclosures exist? Okay.
I think the more foreclosures exist, but I think on a personal level it really comes down to how bad your upside down position is.
It does, exactly.
And we've seen this. We've probably seen the same reports where if somebody's 10% or so upside down on a loan, they're very, very likely to stay and slug it out.
That's right.
If they're 50% or more upside down on a loan, they're almost certain to mail in the keys.
Yes.
And that's going to be a real problem for the lenders.
Do you have another story?
The question I ask people is what do you think is going to heal first, your credit or your equity? And it's pretty clear for most of these folks, at 30%, it's their credit's going to heal long before your equity does.
Well, we're seeing people now with perfectly good credit. There was just an agent, a Coldwell Banker agent, who was fired because she went on TV and kind of was showing the reporter how she counseled her customers to default on their current loan after qualifying and buying a second house. And you know, it was like, here's how you game the system, and here's how I do it for my clients. You know, so there's a lot of gamesmanship going on right now.
With all the foreclosures that we have going on, even in California, you have a 9.7 default in a state that's lost 50% of value. There's a lot of character still showing, to me.
Well, I really do think it's a testament to the culture, to the American culture, that you still have people honoring those contracts.
Yes.
I know if I had purchased my home and it turned out to be that bad a deal, I'd be really furious at my banker, at whoever made the loan, and at the appraiser. Well, think about it. If you're the buyer in our system has always been on an island by him or herself. The realtor. What? The realtor does not have a fiduciary responsibility to the buyer unless they're contractually working with the buyer as a buyer's agent. Okay. The mortgage broker certainly doesn't have a fiduciary responsibility. Okay. The lender has underwriting standards, but isn't responsible for the borrower to make the payments. The guys at Bear Stearns apparently didn't have any fiduciary responsibility, maybe to anybody.
Okay.
So, and you know, if you're a buyer, I remember I got my first mortgage. The research I did was my realtor said, if you don't have somebody to write the mortgage for you, here's the guy I always use. That was my research. And for 100-some years, that's worked really well in our system because everybody played by the rules.
Okay.
It's only the last 5 years when all the rules seem to have flown out the windows.
Okay. David, I've got a couple of questions for you. About 50 to 70%, not working? 50% to 70% of loan modifications fail. Why do you think that is? And should principal reductions be part of loan modifications? I think I already know the answer to this one, but
that's another word for cram down, I would think. But I'd like to go back to something that you just said. The lender does have a fiduciary responsibility in that we have buyback agreements, and if we underwrite the loan, you should see how many of those loans are coming back from Fannie and Freddie right now in our face that they're asking us to repurchase. So we do have a fiduciary responsibility. We underwrite it, we fund it, we close it, unlike the brokers who really don't have a fiduciary.
No, that's fair, but,
they don't.
But what's the recourse for the buyer in that case? If you take a hit, the banker takes a hit, that's fair. But is there a recourse for the buyer in that transaction?
If they committed fraud. And I have a statistic for you that 87% of the loans that are going into foreclosure in this state have fraud committed on them. This state. That should bother you. That means that the loan officer or the realtor, the appraiser, or somebody, the buyer? All knew exactly what they were doing. And I consult for a company that's based here that does fraud detection. I didn't mean to get off on this, but if that's okay.
Go ahead.
And when we actually call the borrower and do an interview, and they say, hey, they told me that even though I made $1,500 a month, if I put down $15,000, I know I'm a gardener, but they said to put down that I own a nursery. And when the house goes up in value, they'd split it with me. And that's the kind of stuff that's going on. We do the interview for it. So hold to the number of 87% of fraud, and fraud is still being committed out there on a regular basis right now.
I'm glad you brought that up because, now I'm going to...
But what was your first? What was
no, I've got a better one now that you've gone that route.
Because I didn't know the answer to it anyway.
I just this last week talked to a president of a company that's located in California. I'm not going to be too specific. He just bought a pool of mortgages for that were face value $335 million for, I'll assume, 25 cents or less on the dollar. And his history was that he was in the subprime business big time and actually probably created the same paper that he is now buying and making a fortune on the other side. So I wanted...
I know who you're talking about.
Okay. You know who I'm talking about, okay. I guess, what's your opinion of that?
Shameful. I mean, it just flat is. There are bad actors everywhere.
Okay.
They need to be called out, but I mean, there is that going on.
We are. The no-down loan, that concept that I just came out with.
Can I say something about subprime mortgages?
Yeah, sure.
I love giving this analogy to Barney Frank. And it's changed a little bit. I've done 4 of my 14 testimonies in front of Congressman Frank. I was asked over here just a minute ago by a lady, and she said, what do you think about him? Now, before you go, oh, boo, 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 let me get through the whole statement here. He's probably one of the most intelligent people in Congress from an IQ standpoint. He gets it. Just don't agree with his policies because his policies are wrong. He's a highly intelligent man. But I sat in front of him and I said, we're talking about subprime mortgages. And a year ago, 8 out of 10 of those were still paying on time. Right now, 7 out of 10. So let's line up 70 people in the room. They got a subprime loan. 30 of them are default or in foreclosure. Let's tell the other 70 they didn't deserve to buy a house. It wasn't the products that were bad. It was they were given to the wrong people. That's a good statistic. 70%, you hit that in baseball, you're in the Hall of Fame. And by the way, the 30% that are failing, 15%, 50% of those will do a loss net workout. So 85% of the people who got a subprime loan won't lose their house. But you don't hear that. That's a real statistic. The media spins it the other way. It may be for now, but I mean, we're dealing with now.
Okay.
I mean, you deal with economic stuff that's now, so let's talk about it now. So,
loan modifications, they fail at a pretty high rate. Should they include principal reductions?
On a case-by-case basis, yes, they should. But everything should be done on a case-by-case basis. We used to underwrite loans 25 years ago when I was a loan officer full-time on a case-by-case basis. We didn't have DULP and DO in a black box that we don't know what's in it. We still don't know what's in it.
Okay.
I'm a DE underwriter. My wife's an underwriter. I used to tell people, I sleep with the underwriter to get my loan approved. It's not fraud, it was legitimate. But think about it. We manually underwrote loans and people had to qualify. It's what we're doing again today. We're making the best loans today we've made in 15 years. But when they go through automated, that's part of the downfall of what happened. But
Okay.
yes, loan on case-by-case basis, the answer is yes. And that's,
Okay.
I know that's surprising.
No. Rick.
I'm sorry, I can't help myself. It's this side of the room.
Okay.
Chris is rubbing off. We are asking the system, and we are asking lenders and servicers to use tools in a way they were never designed to be used. Okay, we're trying to build a house with a screwdriver when we need a hammer and saw. We're talking about loan modification programs, forbearance programs, workout programs that were meant, to his point, to be used on a case-by-case basis, and we're trying to turn them into mass market products. And we're looking for President Obama or somebody to wave a magic wand over the whole thing. It's out of pixie dust. People complain about short sales. Short sales were supposed to be a rare occurrence for that unimaginable circumstance where somebody fell on bad financial times at exactly the same time as house loss value. And now we're wondering why we can't ask a single loan officer, a loss mitigation manager, to do 100 of them a day because that's how many files he's getting. It's that the tools were not meant for the volume of activity we're seeing, and the system is broken.
Yeah, Tommy, can you fix that pretty quick for him?
I really think we can.
Yeah.
I passionately believe we can. But you have to arrive at value.
I think you could come up with that almost any day you wanted to.
If you arrive at value, just like the thing that amazes me is probably everybody in this room that is invested in the stock market or has been invested in the stock market, your equity is off at least 30% unless you're very, very bright. And yet there's nothing you don't think the government should change some sort of modification. They shouldn't come down with a cram down. You don't have any other, you just say, you know what? I made a miscalculation. We have made a terrible miscalculation in the real estate industry, and I think it was driven by a lot of very false hopes. The number one thing being, those of you that are gray-headed know that real estate does not always go up. And we have sold the concept, Pat, don't take this offense to this, but we have sold the concept. Okay, we have sold the concept that when you buy a home, it automatically goes up. When you buy a home, you have a home to live in. That's a wonderful thing. That's what its number one purpose is. The fact that you think it is for sure going to go up and speculate on that will bring you where we are tonight. That's what I believe strongly.
Well, Pat, John, I'm going to get right back to you. Pat, has the reason why people buy homes changed since 07 or 06? Has the mentality changed?
It depends where you live.
Okay.
All real estate is local. I think that there are markets that went crazy, and because of those crazy markets, people were starting to look at real estate as an investment. For years in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where our markets haven't gone sky high, we're talking about a place to live. This is your home. This is the place you come home to, and this is where your family lives. And that's what real estate's all about. And when the markets went like this in areas, and I'm going to say California is probably leading edge in that, people started to view it in the wrong way. And I agree wholeheartedly with Tommy that our marketplaces, and again, depending where you live, got skewed because of that. And I agree that a house and the realtors who have brought some of those ideas out about the investment and, we're going to, you got to buy this because it's going to be your life savings, or you're going to buy this because you're going to flip it next week. I think that our houses in our marketplaces are sold as a place to live. Now, there are investors, and I think that's good too.
I'm sorry.
More problems from the peanut gallery.
The NAR hires economists to go out there and produce ridiculous research to support prices. There was never one point in time when the NAR or the California Association of Realtors stood up in 2005 and 2006 and said this is a bubble and prices are too high. I never heard that come out of your organization.
Well, I'm sorry, but we had very valid research. And I'm sorry if you didn't hear that I don't think anybody would ever say a bubble.
I debated economists from the CAR and from NAR. I stood on stage and listened to these guys tell me that there wasn't a bubble and prices were perfectly fine in California when they had tripled in 7 years. You can't possibly sit here and tell us that the National Association of Research National Association of Realtors was just an innocent victim on the sideline that was just hit blindsided by these crazy buyers in California. I'm sorry, that's not the case. Your industry supported the bubble. They made massive amounts of money from the bubble, and now you want a government handout because the bubble has collapsed.
Yeah, I don't agree. I know that, and I'm not going to debate with you because you are much smarter than I am.
I think our viewing audience just went up online. I don't know.
But I will say this, that I think that currently we have a different economist and a new economist. I don't know if you've met him or looked at what he's doing. But our livelihood and the way that our economists brought numbers together we felt was credible. And you didn't agree, and there were people that did agree, and I will respectfully disagree with what you're saying. So, other questions?
Let me ask another question.
I have a story I'd like to tell.
Okay, go ahead.
This is an interesting story. I moved to Oklahoma in 1985. And I came from Western Illinois at that time, and we had just gone through a serious depression in rural America. I don't know, those of you in California might not have been affected by that. So when I came to Oklahoma in 1985, I was fresh from seeing radical real estate devaluations. For an example, I sold a farm at auction that brought $3,500 an acre. The same farm, I sold it right before I moved to Oklahoma. It brought $1,200 an acre. And by the way, there was no bailout. But here's the real issue that I wanted to talk about. I met a lady immediately after I came that wanted to sell her house there in Tulsa. And I looked at her house, and unfortunately, she was upside down at that particular time. And Tulsa's a very stable market. And I said, ma'am, your house will not bring what you owe on it. That's one of the few people that have ever really gotten violently mad at me. She was, irate. She says, I want you to know I'm from California. I'm going to go back to California. Never heard of such a thing. I'm going to write my congressman, a law should be passed that a house cannot ever devaluate. And that lady meant every word she said.
Was that Nancy Pelosi?
That was Nancy. She came back. That's right.
Somewhere I've lost control here. Okay, now let's get back to a subject that I brought up here. The nothing down sale loan. I mean, you were saying the $8,000 was good for the industry. First of all, wouldn't you get at least the same result with a qualified buyer and nothing down?
You know, I'm really not sure about that, because what I'm finding is that a qualified buyer, there's a lot of qualified buyers sitting along on this fence. And one of the things that we've been seeing for quite some time is that they've been sitting there because they've been hearing about constantly, all media's talking about markets going down, prices are going down, and all that kind of stuff. And
it was true.
Well, okay, but when are you going to turn it? I mean, it's a little bit like Tommy in the stock market. When are you going to pick up that stock, and when are you going to know when it hits bottom or when it's coming back up? And what's happening, and I'm just going to speak for my marketplace, which is Grand Rapids, Michigan, which really doesn't equate completely to all of the California markets, some of them, I think. But in Grand Rapids, what's happening is that the choice is down. I mean, for a while when those prices went down with all of the foreclosure, there was just one heck of a lot of choice. People could walk in and, you could pick from a lot of houses. Now with the $8,000 tax credit and with a lot of buyers buying up the low-price houses and investors, I think it's a really good investor market to turn those houses. But what we're finding is that now that the $8,000 tax credit is in, those people who have been sitting on the fence are saying, well, I think it's about time for me to finally get in. When are interest rates going to be lower? The things they're looking at is low interest rates, choice in the marketplace, and they're looking at affordability. And right now, we're finding that there's less choice because the market's going up, and the prices are tipping up, which you've seen on some of those graphs. And so those people are going, well, I think I better buy now and get into the market.
Do we have to induce them with a check? I'm not being facetious. I'm being.
I would have said no 6 months ago.
Okay. Is it okay for them not to buy? I mean, in other words, I don't want to really get in the habit of always handing somebody a bonus.
I hear what you're saying,
Yeah,
and
I really don't want to
it
do
bothers me a bit to
Okay.
think that we have to pay off somebody to perhaps get into the housing market.
Yeah.
But
Can I uplift Pat a little bit?
Sure.
Because she's getting just picked
Yeah,
on.
and I don't like that.
I feel
either.
terrible.
Yeah, really. Come on. I mean, the only woman up here. Give me a break.
I want to get Chris fired up because he's just so passive. But I want you to be aware that there's a proposal out there right now by Senator Dodd and Senator Isaacson, bipartisan, signed on by 14 other senators when they come back from their little vacation earlier this week, to go next year or right now for a $15,000 tax credit. Okay, now hang on just a second.
Now that's better. Yeah.
Now, hang on. The current $8,000 tax credit started out the last two times in the Senate as a $15,000 tax credit and got whacked down in the House, went to markup, stayed at $7,500, came back to $8,000. That was the process. MBA is supporting, for two reasons, a $15,000 tax credit open to everybody. It's not a black, white, Hispanic problem. It's not a low, middle, high-income problem. It's an American problem. It should be open to everybody if it's fair. We want to be given a closing.
Owner-occupied and
Owner-occupied
Why?
and second homes is what we're promoting.
Not
Now,
investors?
I'm telling you what we're promoting now.
I got to get a plug in.
Well, but here's one statistic nobody else has put out tonight.
Okay.
Doesn't matter whether it's bailout, doesn't matter whether it's the tax credit. Every time somebody buys a house, after investment and after closing cost, they spend an average of $7,500 on that house. That is money that goes into Lowe's, Home Depot, Porter Payne, Haverty's Furniture, whatever it is. That is money from the consumer that they spend. Our economist, Jay Brinkman, estimates that if the $15,000 tax credit was approved today over the next year, it would spur an additional 400,000 purchases over the next year. Take 7,500 times 400,000, boom. Say again? Now wait. You've gone first every time. You hang on a second. And here's the last thing. I cannot document this, all right? But you know this is true. Every time somebody buys a house under this first-time homebuyer Pat's talking about, or if it's 15, whatever it is, I would argue with you that they may and probably are taking a house off the market that is either in foreclosure or about to go into foreclosure. The money the government's going to spend on that to bail it out anyway. So there is a help. Say again? I'd agree with you. That doesn't have anything to do with this. Okay. I will, but I mean, that's a different discussion than what we're talking about here.
Listen, I don't know why you're being so modest about this. Why 15,000? Why so cheap? No, seriously. Let's go 150,000, and let's go for 20,000 in every car. We'll go for $300 on every beer.
Dueling
we'll go for $500 on bottles of vodka.
Now, Chris, you can be as sarcastic as you want.
No, we'll go to Vegas. We go to Vegas. If I put down $10 on the blackjack table, we're going to have the government put down another $10 to double up on my bet.
Now, listen.
What the hey, come on, it creates jobs in Vegas. No, listen, you can't play this game forever. You can't subsidize
I'm
things.
not playing the game.
Yeah.
I'm saying there is a proposal out there. I'm strictly bringing it up.
Right. Okay, fair enough. But I'm simply showing the ridiculousness of the proposal.
Which you do so well tonight.
I appreciate that. But no, seriously, listen, there is a reason to have these things in the short run. The markets can get into sort of a death spiral, and it works quite simply. You have prices going down, causing people not to want to buy, causing prices to go down more, and so on and so forth. How do you break that death spiral? You have a temporary credit. And it's temporary for the reason that was already mentioned. Because, wow, it's coming to an end. I got to get in now. People move in. You get the short-run burst in sales to stabilize the market, and then you stop the subsidy and let the thing play out.
Well, here's the question.
You can't continue these
Here's
things.
the question that
Who's
hasn't
gonna
been
pay
asked
for
by
this?
anybody tonight, and we haven't broached it, and it's the 8,000-pound gorilla in the room. All right? Let's go back to the Bush administration a year ago this month. What happened a year ago this month? Fannie Freddie put into conservatorship. Let's go back at the cause of where we are. Too big to fail? No. If everything would have been allowed to fail, regardless of what it is, GM, Fannie, Freddie, I don't care what it is, my opinion, I'm not going to speak for NBA right now, we would have been 10 times worse than what it was, but it would have been over by now. It would have been short-lived, and we've been back on the way to recovery. We need to let things fail. I mean, that was my president that I voted for that came out with this, that forced the TARP money on the banks. Now they can't pay it back because the guys are there now saying, we control the banks and the bank stock. Do you know what's happening on the independent lender side right now that we didn't talk about tonight? Do you know the independent lender out there is going out of business? Not the broker, but the lender, because he can't get warehouse line capacity. You know why? Because the Obama administration has put on a capital requirement that every time they lend $1, they have to put $1 reserve. We had 120 facilities a year ago that gave warehouse lines to lenders. We have 12 today. 12. Colonial National just went under. Taylor Bean and Whitaker just went under. And as the independent mortgage banker, brokers are about done. As the independent mortgage banker goes out of business, all the money is being funneled to where? Wells, Chase, Citi, BB&T, Bank of America. Who has the TARP money?
Okay.
Think about it.
Okay. All right. I'm going to try and regain control a little bit. and I think all of those, honestly, those are great subjects. No, I appreciate that. I'm going to try and come down here. I'm going to go back. Joseph, I wanted to ask a question, and this is really important to our industry. And who has the final say in the real world as to what a property is worth? Is it the appraiser, the review appraiser, the underwriter, or is there some boss of the underwriter that is now hovering over the system?
Is this mic on? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Before I start, I just want to say, if I need a heart transplant, give me Chris's. He's never been used. So. But I think everyone speaks the truth. I think the real problem, before I get there, I wanted to speak about this. Now I'm going to stand up for the integrity of this lady here because a Marine always does that. But the problem with government subsidies, we never find the real market, and the real market sets the prices. It's not the appraiser, it's not the reviewer, it's not the AVM. The market will set a price, but as long as government meddles in that mechanism, we can never find the true demand, the true supply balance, where that price is. That's what this young man was talking about. First of all, an appraiser usually has an opportunity to observe the property, either from the exterior or with the interior observation. Let's talk about residential. That's mainly what this is geared towards. They should have the best opinion of that if they're knowledgeable in that market and they do their job. That should be it. AVM is just an awful valuation model that may tell you which appraisals should be reviewed because the expected values come outside a certain range. So AVM is a statistical model that says, you know what, that's an anomaly. Let's have this one reviewed or that one reviewed. For lenders to use AVMs to turn down an appraiser's opinion, I think is erroneous. It's wrong. It's unfair.
And it's commonplace.
And unfortunately, it's commonplace. But you should stay with the appraiser, or you should get another review appraisal done on it. And I'm talking a second opinion. And that's just not going to happen. It's just unfortunately not going to happen. And by the way, the difference between a terrorist and underwriter is we can negotiate with terrorists, right? So, some underwriters are some of my friends, and I use that term generously. But we have to remember is that government intervention just means we postpone the eventual. We have to find out where the market is. It needs to be a free market. I personally think the trash for cash, or whatever you call it, thing with cars, the only great thing about that, it got rid of a lot of 2009 new cars off the dealer's lot so that somebody's not floor planning that. This tax credit, I talked to 5 major builders in my market area. Most of them built 700 or 800 homes per year. One had taken 3 permits out this year. Says he never wants to own any dirt again. In other words, no subdivisions, no lots. Doesn't want to go there. And he hired our firm to do some fundamental market analysis and to come up with a pricing mechanism in a value, but he wanted a real value because he said, I don't think I can build it for what I can sell it for.
Right. Well,
and as long he said, but we had a burst. He said, I sold 8 homes last week. That's like a record. That's more homes we sold in a week in years. I said, were any of those subsidized? It's half. So I said, now you know half demand. You know what half the demand is, but you don't know what the demand is. And so I don't know if I answered your question. If not, I had fun talking finally.
Well, you know, I couch that with in the real world because of what's going on.
The answer to your question is, I don't have a microphone, is in most companies, all right, in ours, the underwriter has the final say on the value of the property. If they want to raise it, not take it, or lower it, and cut it. The underwriter has
the underwriter trumps it. And now, who is in charge of the underwriter? In other words, is there a boss that says, we don't want to make that loan at appraised value?
That's company to company. But in our company, we empower our people. That's what Diane's paid to do, my head underwriter. And if she comes to me and says, I think based on what we have here that the value, I like this, we're going to raise the value $1,500, or it's worth 5 more, we can do it. We've done it. We have more flexibility, by the way, on an FHA appraisal than we do on a Fannie or Freddie. The guidelines are different. We can also override a refer. If the loan is rejected in the automated underwriting system, you can override it on an FHA loan and make a business decision like we used to. You can't do it on a conventional loan.
Okay. Go ahead.
I want to say, and I don't disagree with one thing you say, but I do some training for banks in other items in FDIC, and I went to the bank the other day, did some training, and their underwriters, the reviewers, none of those people were licensed or certified. None of them really had a foundation evaluation methodology or science. Yet they're going to sit there and second guess someone, or someone at a big firm in Florida or California is going to tell me about north side of Chicago. Give me a break. You know, if you don't, you know your market area. In Chicago, this side of the street can be $300,000, this side can be $150,000. Now, AVM doesn't know that. And to let underwriters make those deals, then I think go for a fair housing complaint. You have an appraisal, it's done. If our underwriter wants to cut the value, let them show it the way an appraiser would have to do that. Document some methodologies. Don't sit there and say, well, AVM said this, and so they're wrong.
What happened to the decision of the buyer to look at the marketplace and say, I've seen all the vacant houses that are listed for $75, and I will buy this fixed one for $135. The system is trumping that decision as if he has no clue what they're doing. This is near and dear to everybody's heart here. We typically have been buying properties, and I'll give you a real example just to show you how silly this is getting. We bought a property in Moreno Valley for 50 grand, fixed it with 35. Okay, it needed it because it didn't have a kitchen and a bathroom, and so we went to sell it, and we got 6 offers inside of 48 hours for 120 to 122. To me, that states market value. There was a buyer times 6 looking at the entire inventory saying, this is better deal than anything else at 120 or 122 and superior to something on the street that's 75 that doesn't have a kitchen. The appraisal comes in at 102. The review appraisal comes in at 85. At 85, we're not rewarded for the effort, so we no longer make the effort in Moreno Valley to buy and sell a property. And here's the ramifications of that. We could have had a 120 comp for the whole neighborhood to enjoy. Now they have a 50 grand comp to look at because they didn't allow the buyer's decision to say that's true market value, which is in the definition of the form. It's getting trumped by somebody else, and what they've said is, and by the way, we said, okay, we'll just keep it. We rented it for $1,150. The payment at 85 at 5% would have been $600. With tax benefits under $500, the appraisal world, and I'm not picking now, I'm just saying the way it's gone right now is that owning a house is being topped out at half of rental value. Ridiculous.
Bruce, I must point out, we can end this right now. If you'd hired us to begin with, it would have brought $130,000. It would have closed the week after. Everything that you say would have now come true, and the world would be wonderful.
Except for they got to get an appraisal if they're going to get a loan. That's the problem. Oh, okay, here we go.
No. When we sell a house,
yes,
it is not contingent on financing.
Well, the buyer...
So the buyer has to know how they're going to get... That doesn't mean they're bought for cash by any means. In fact, most of the homes we sell are financed. But the gentleman doing the buying already knows exactly what they qualify for. They already know how they can make it all happen. So, wait. Pat asked a wonderful question. How can they get an appraisal? You realize that in my entire life, I've never had an appraiser dispute what the house brought at auction. That's the truth. I have, and that's based on, I don't even have any idea. Tens of thousands of homes.
Can I have my appraisers call you directly? You're better at... I'm only kidding. Yes,
so it's a very interesting question, but it seems to me, and I don't know the mortgage industries, but let me just toss this out here. The problem is the banks worry about the appraisals because, for all you know, your buyer's dumb. And if
there were 6 buyers that were dumb within 48 hours.
They're all dumb, and the banker's smart, and that's all they care about, right? But the point I'm trying to make is this. What if we allowed a system where you had recourse mortgages again? I mean, you can buy this house for what was greater than the appraisal as long as you sign this little secondary note that says that if you go bankrupt, we can go after your other assets.
Christopher, you're talking to me. You're saying by saying that you're saying the appraisal system is correct and the buyer is wrong, and that you've got to respect the buyer's decision more than that. That, as a matter of fact, if if that's not going to be part of it, then get it out of the appraisal.
Bruce,
it says that.
No one knows you had 6 offers. All right, there's one offer that you accepted, and the appraisal came in at less than that offer, and that's what the bank sees.
No,
right?
they saw
and
that
what
they had
said.
6,
But again, remember, the bank is worried that if your buyer can't pay his mortgage,
which is half of rent,
whatever, they turn around and they can only sell for $85,000, and that puts them in a lost position. Again, if the buyer could sign a secondary note that says we are willing to make this a full recourse loan, it shouldn't make a difference. Am I right on that?
Okay.
Well, still, but if it's a recourse loan, if you sell it for less, you still have recourse to go after other assets, right? In their portfolio.
I want to ask the builder, John. We didn't mean to pass you over, but
It's fine. I'm
Okay.
listening. I'm a good listener.
Okay. What
Especially to Chris.
when you have the competition of REO inventory in the markets right now, the sale price is typically what percentage of your cost, would you say? So in Riverside, you're seeing a lot of properties. Well, Moreno Valley, we can't get $80 or $90 a foot at retail for the product. What would it cost you to replace that, including let's say you didn't look at a building lot, you looked at a hill and turned it into a building lot and had to put in a cul-de-sac. What are your costs that get to that house? What square foot price are you when you're all done, if you will?
Well, the sticks and bricks are about $50 a square foot.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't include the land or the fees or the actual improvement of the lot. So I hope that helps in the answer. But I could give you an example. In Fontana, where I build, and we built for a long time, so we've been in this market for about 20 years, we have built homes in the last 5 years. They're now repos. So now we really tried as a company, and I'm talking about personally our company, to sell to owner-occupied, people that had good FICO scores. We dealt with Wells Fargo, and at that time they were very nervous about this Alt-A and subprime loans, so most of those people did not go into foreclosure. Now, not on the general market. Our competitors were not as, I guess, holistic as we were and thought about that. They would sell to anybody mostly, investors, people that were not occupied. But so what's happened in our market, and it's similar throughout the Inland Empire because we've had a lot of product there, we're similar to the Las Vegas market and the Phoenix market, is that to sell a house, and I'm going to get to the answer to your question, Bruce, we have to really drop the price. I mean, Chris talked about, well, you're going to get this $8,000 federal credit, and that is a credit. Even if you didn't pay any income tax federally, you get that $8,000. Now, the state's a little different. You only get the credit up to the tax that you had paid. So, for example, you paid zero tax in the state, you didn't get any credit. And most of those credits run about $5,000 to $6,000, and they're divided by 3 years. And that's what the state credit was. It's divided by 3 years. So it wasn't quite a hit to the state coffers. But anyway, we have to lower our prices enough to induce buyers that are willing, ready, and able to buy a home that is very competitive to the foreclosures in our market. Now, how we get away with that, meaning because our homes are more expensive than the foreclosures, and I think that's where you were going,
right,
is that we can show the value difference on the foreclosure that will take this $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 to refurbish. So that's how we're still able to compete in our market. Now, to get back to Chris, the market, the volume, we aren't building 216,000 or 225,000. And that mantra has been with the BIA for many years. I don't know if I buy into that. It's the company logo kind of thing, and maybe underneath I don't think we need 225,000 units, but it is a number that's been always bandied about. But you can see what's happening. We've got 40,000. That's the market today. And so most of my builders and friends, they're out of the business or they're in another business, or like myself, I went from a 700-unit a year company to this year we'll probably build about 70 homes.
You know, getting back to the economists that deal with certain industries, and let's say that was a statement from an economist from the building industry that California needed to build 230,000 homes or something, when you yourself know you can't sell the 70,000 you've already built. I just think that hurts credibility. I mean, and it must not feel good as an industry. And I think I wouldn't have liked, and I'm a broker. I didn't really like seeing the conclusions come out. And I'm not picking, but I think that the economists of these organizations owe more to their organization than that. Because if you're a realtor trying to map out your plan for how am I going to make money for my family, and you're told that this is all going to be fine, and you're farming people instead of farming lender-owned properties, you might not eat as well. So that's the struggle that I would have, is that if there's an agenda, that's the problem for me. Right now, for instance, I think it's a really good time to buy a property, even though I think the prices are going to go down, and it's because of the combination of interest rates and price that you get this silly payment that's possible. So I'm all for anybody saying, I think this is a reasonable period of time to buy, I would agree with that, especially in California. But I do think, because of what I showed on the board, that there's going to be a price decline. But my own opinion is most of the price decline will go to the as-is inventory, because you're not going to have a loan available to a home without a kitchen, and they're coming by the maybe thousands, okay? What really is detrimental to our market is when we don't get rewarded for the 35 grand repair. And right now, the appraisal business has this model that says, if you sell a house for 135 and you have a 35 grand repair bill, we don't have a line item that is acceptable. It's too big. And so our appraisal system, honestly, is a little broken right now because we're dealing with an all-time event. And every sale we have is an anomaly. Every one of them, because the neighborhood's full of 60 grand houses, and the buyer wants ours at 130 because it's got a kitchen and it's got financing. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Who would put up 35 grand and say and get a 15 grand return for it and say, well, I'm going to sign up and do lots of these? You know, we got to get paid for that. And the customer is saying, we like your product. Here's a bunch of offers. And it feels like we have somebody over the top saying, Mr. Buyer, that's a bad decision. Let us protect you against what you have concluded. And it's hurting the market. And even further down the road, and you're in the banking world, if that neighborhood doesn't have that 120 comp, there are more foreclosures that occur. There's more mortgage default swaps that cash in those bets. And AIG owes another $100 billion of our dough, and it's not supposed to happen. But the appraisal world right now, it's kind of broke. And that's why I asked. I kind of asked who's in charge of that answer, because the answer doesn't make sense. Okay. Sorry, didn't mean to get in my rant here.
I agree with what you're saying. The appraisal process is broke. First of all, there is no magic number in appraising that an adjustment of some percentage can't be made. The general underlying rule is if you're going to make a line item adjustment, if you're going to adjust for one thing and it's more than 10% of the sale price, you need to explain why you're doing it. I think I told you in the radio interviews and those sort of things. We were in that problem before when we came through our other housing crises. And when the market has, if it's been properly exposed in the market at a price, an offer comes in and you have multiple backup offers, I asked for a copy of those offers, put it with it, and I wrote my appraisals up, and I considered those in my valuation, even though I didn't have sales to do that. Unfortunately, it's the underwriters today that don't allow that to happen. It's really, the appraisers are afraid of underwriters for some reason, and that's a problem. And certainly they have rules, they have things they have to follow, but I think the market sets the price, and if you have 6 people willing to pay a price, that's probably a pretty good indication what market is. And that's what I would suggest that a competent person would come up with that conclusion.
I would agree. Yes, sir. We have about 10 minutes, and I'm going to have everyone have about 1 minute to answer this question, and then I'll let you go. What's the biggest problem the real estate market is facing, and what's the solution? And you'll probably have 1 minute apiece. But go ahead. Oh, no. We're going to start. No. We're going to start down here. All right. All right.
I think the biggest problem that real estate has, at least from my perspective, would be appraisal management companies that hire incompetent people, that are not qualified, they don't have enough experience in the market. That results in faulty answers, which kills deals, and I think that's a big issue.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. Pat? Good. Double microphone.
Sure. Well, it's hard to say, I think. For me and for the realtors that I work with in the field out there, our biggest problem is getting some of the inventory out of the marketplace, the plethora of short sales that not one group of people know how to sell. And that marketplace, when you look at an MLS and you look at a search for a buyer, and that search has 75% of those houses that they want to look at, and they're all, say, subject to short sale. And 90% of the time, they'll never close. I think that right now is the biggest trouble we've got on the marketplace, and I'm really looking forward to having someone answer the question of what the solution is, because that is a very, very tough thing for us. It's not the foreclosed houses. The foreclosed houses are easy because a bank owns them, and somebody can answer something as far as what's going on and if we bring them an offer. But right now, the number of short sales and the mindset of sellers that they can just say, well, I'm done, and I'm going for a short sale.
Okay. Tommy.
I bet you're surprised at what I'm going to tell you. I think the problem, of course, I think we've all identified it. It's a tremendous volume of deteriorating empty homes. They need to be put into the hands of either the investor or the homeowner as quick as we can possibly put them there in a free market system, and I happen to think auctions do it very well.
Boy, that's a surprise. I agree. As a home builder for our market in Inland Empire, we need to get through this inventory as fast as we can. And I wish I was smart enough to figure that all out. I think Bruce, earlier on one of his slides, talked about some of the ideas he had. Zero down, more investors, Freddie, Fannie Mae, where you don't have to be restricted to 10 loans. We're going to need a multiple-pronged effort to get through this inventory. And so as a home builder, I'd like to get through that inventory. So then there's some kind of equalization, and I can determine how many houses I could build and then make my business model go to that. And that's what I'd like to see.
Thank you.
I think economists are the biggest problem. It is the truth.
I get my go.
Actually, we've decided we're not going to let you have the microphone.
Oh, we're out of time. Sorry.
Good. Is people who are making laws, whether it's state, because we're fighting for preemption. We'd like to have a set of national laws. But it's people making laws, Congress, who don't understand our business and who have never run a business and met a payroll.
I'm going to find a way to work the comment into this answer. I think the entire real estate ecosystem is out of balance. We have imbalances completely up and down basically every part of the food chain. Valuations are out of balance. We have less professional, less competent appraisers, and we probably shouldn't even call them appraisers, artificially screwing up the system by undervaluing properties they don't understand. We have, because of that, a freeze in the capital markets because the lenders are afraid to lend on properties that they can't trust the appraisals on. We have hundreds of thousands of homeowners, at least, who are upside down on their loans. And we have too much inventory for the market's ability to buy. So I think there's just imbalances across the entire ecosystem of the real estate market. And honestly, I'm not sure there is a one-size-fits-all answer. I think this is, I'll give you a metaphor, Chris. I think this is one of those cases where the only way we're going to get rid of this elephant is one bite at a time.
Okay. Now he's trying to think how he can use that when we're not here.
Right.
That's
I
what
was
it is.
just trying to. It's a lot of elephant. I don't. Everybody in this room understands that real estate is a boom-bust phenomenon. Whether you're in the mortgage business, real estate business, the building business, when times are good, it's very good. When times are bad, it's very bad. 2001 to 2006 was a phenomenal time for the people in the industry, and as a result of that, they're suffering through one of the worst crashes. We're going to work through this, and things are going to improve again. That's a given. Now, from a longer run perspective, what you're dealing with when it comes to housing is a mess of rules and regulations and programs and subsidies and taxes. That's insane. I mean, think about a couple things. For example, the local governments are constantly pushing all sorts of crazy taxes and assessments on builders, which drive up the price of homes. Suddenly, a constituency can't afford those homes. So then they turn around and try to subsidize the price of a home by having FHA mortgages and all sorts of stuff. You don't want a loan on a house to be like a normal loan, so what do? You make it a no-recourse loan. You just attach it just to the assets itself. But then suddenly, third-party appraisers are more important than what someone's willing to buy a home for. We keep trying to fix one problem, and we create other problems. We try to fix that problem, we create other problems. What really needs to happen is a massive deregulation of the whole thing from top to bottom. Clear the air and try to build a market that's going to work efficiently as opposed to allowing all these crazy regulations to sit in place. So.
Okay. I've got to say that I had very high expectations for this evening, and they were exceeded. So I am very, very happy that we had this event. For my part, what I hope is that the investor will somehow find a way into what you talk about if you ever get in front of Congress and we have a chance to get more financing and so forth. I feel like the investor is usually that's the other person. And right now, we're a very important solution to this gigantic problem, and right now our hands are being tied. So the more support we can give for each other, I think the better off we'll be. And the investor, if we're allowed to get financing, one of the key things is if we fix it and take it off the market, it doesn't return as for sale inventory. And that's real important. But if we can't get financing, we either have to leave it alone or we have to have enough cash to pay for it and keep it that way. And there's only so much cash we've got. So anyway, I want to thank all of you tonight, and I hope you experienced this as a very positive event. I really do. Thank you.